All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott, your instructor for the online version of 152, 163 Relational Database Design for the fall 2015 semester at Blackhawk Technical College. Since I gave you the previous lecture, I've gone back and for the class now I have added, so there's the syllabus, both in Word and PDF format. There is the course evaluation. The videos will be placed here under content videos. It just says to be provided, but it will be out there. I don't know if I have the source for the book. I put the PowerPoints out there. They're just for the Microsoft Access, I believe. There might be one more PowerPoint out there also, but they're in a zip file. You notice that they're 31 meg. In class, probably will never have anything in it. The homework will be right here. Again, it says to be provided. I do have an announcement where I welcome you to the class. Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Jeff Scott. I'll be your instructor as this is an online class. 100% will be delivered online. I will videotape all lectures and make the material available as soon as possible. My goal is to have all of the class material out there before class begins officially on the 24th. All right. It is expected you'll adhere and do your own work. If you don't, and I find out about it, that's bad things can happen. Please respond to the email. Feel free to do that if you want to. Again, welcome to the class, and contact me if you have any questions. All right, so that's out there under the announcements. I've also added a very simplistic little discussion board. As it says, this is a discussion board. I will be monitoring it infrequently. All right, so all of that stuff is out there. So let's begin. So, as you are going through this, I would strongly recommend that you have your book out also, and I'm opening mine up at the same time. And I'm opening it up to the Access chapter. So Access Chapter 1, which is in, I don't know, maybe 100 pages or so. The chapter is called Databases and Database Objects and Introduction. So I'm just going to start the slideshow. I'm not in any hurry. When I'm in the classroom, typically my presentations, the way I set it up is I go for about 50 minutes, then we take a 10-minute break, and then I go for 50 minutes. Since this is online, we'll just see how it goes. It might take a little longer, it might take a little less time. So, all right. So here are our objectives, or some of our objectives. Describe the features of the Access window. We're going to take a look at this both in this lesson, in the PowerPoints, and then next lesson, I'm going to go and build a simple database for you. We're going to start going over this. I should also mention to you, just so you hear this, if the sound sounds a little tinny in here, I'm recording at least this lecture and the previous one where I went over the syllabus. I'm recording those at home, and I don't have nearly the acoustics that I have when I'm in an empty room at Blackhawk, or even when I'm in a room with students in Blackhawk. I've got an older machine that I'm using. I've got an older version of Camtasia, and you may or may not be able to tell, but I've got the door shut, but the dryer is going in the background, so sorry about all that. So describe the features of the Access window. Create a database. Create tables, and then differentiate between datasheet view and design view. Physically add records to a table. Close a database and then reopen it. Print the contents of a table, create and use a query, create and use a form, create and print reports, modify a report and layout view, perform special database operations, and design a database to satisfy a collection of requirements. Most of the stuff, queries, that's really Chapter 2, forms, Chapters 4 to 7, reports, Chapters 4 to 7, all right? Database operations, that's mainly Chapter 3, and design a database is what we talk about throughout the book here. So, this is what the exact same picture as the one that's shown in your book on page, I guess, Access 3, I think, AC3, figure 1-1A. Now, rather than go over this picture, I'm going to show you this in a little different way. All right? And hopefully what I'm about to show you is going to make sense. All right, at least as you'd guess, you know, That's my hope. So I want to come through here and I want to add a new blank workbook. So I'm going to come through here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a lot bigger so that you're able to read it okay. All right, so let's suppose that we've got a company, and at the company we've got employees. So I'm going to have a field here. Don't worry about what fields are, but I just want to show you this. It's called first name, and another one that's called last name, and another one that's called department. All right, so I've created that. There are 3 things in here. And I'm going to suppose I have about, let's just start with about a dozen people working at my company. So we'll put in here Ronald White, who works in IT. Jane Smith, who works in payroll. Kenneth Jones, who works in accounting. We're going to suppose we have only 3 departments at our company. All right. Mark Martin, who works in payroll. Mary Johnson works in IT. Carl Green works in IT. Julie we'll have another Jones. Julie Jones, she works in payroll. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, like I said, we'll make about 12 in here. So I'll put myself in there, and I'll say I work in IT. Okay, that's about 10, so we'll put in a couple more. And Chloe will work in payroll. Now, when you look at the information here, I'm going to take it from its most fundamental point and then build it up. Every time I typed in a character here, so for instance, the first person was Ronald White. When I typed in that R represents a character. All right, that shouldn't be really anything surprising. All right, so really when you think about it, a character is basically anything you can key in. Now, when I take one or more of those characters that are related and put them together, that's a first name. So a character is anything you can key in. What's called a field is one or more related characters. So you can see I've got a first name field, I've got a last name field, and I've got a department field. So I've got 3 different fields in my table right now. Okay? Now, if I grab the information about any one person, typically referred to not as a person, but any one entity, E-N-T-I-T-Y, that's what's called a record. So a record is one or more related fields. All right? So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 records in my table. And each record has 1, 2, 3 fields in it. All right? All of that information collectively is referred to as a table. So a table is one or more related records. Notice I'm saying one or more. A field could be literally just a character long if I had a middle initial field. A record could have only one field in it. Typically you won't have that, but you could. A table won't only have one record in it, but again, it could. All right? And then finally we've got a database, which is one or more related tables. Now those are my definitions. They're not the ones you're going to find in the book. The book on page AC2 defines a database as a collection of data organized in a manner that allows access, retrieval, and use of that data. Okay, sounds good to me. Finally, we're going to be working with what's called a database management system, which more often is referred to as a DBMS, or really what's referred to as an R for relational, RDBMS. All right, and I'll just put the definition. This is the book has. Software, this is on page 8, AC2, that allows you to use a computer to create, add, change, and delete data in a database. Now, not every book that you read is going to totally agree with that definition. It's fine for all intents and purposes and everything that we're doing. All right? Now, I'll save what I'm working on here. I'll save this spreadsheet and I'll put it someplace else. But for right now, again, you've seen all of these definitions. But I'm going to grab those and I'm going to cut them, and I'm not going to remove them. I'm just going to put them down here for now. So they're still there, but they're down below. So why am I doing that? Because I want to mention something to you. If you take a look right now, this may or may not make sense to you, but there's a lot of redundant data in here. IT appears 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Payroll appears 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And accounting appears, looks like, just a couple times. But the point is, I've got that information, and really instead of department, I probably should have called this department name. But that's a lot of redundant information. Imagine if I had thousands of employees, I'd be wasting a lot of space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build another table. And I'm going to, so this table right here that I'm working on, I'm just going to keep this small here so it stands out. So this is going to be my employees table. All right. And now over here, I'm going to create what I'm going to call my departments table. All right. And again, I want to keep it a little bit smaller. So ideally, at least, it stands out. Okay. Now, I'm only going to have a couple fields in here. I'm going to have the department name. I'm sorry. The department number and the department name. Now, I'm just arbitrarily going to have this be 1, 2, and 3. And department 1 is going to be IT. Department 2 is payroll. And department 3 is accounting. And you might think, well, why did you do that? You didn't really buy yourself much of anything. Not yet. But ideally, in just a minute, we will. Now I can replace every occurrence of IT with the number 1. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I can replace every occurrence of payroll with 2. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And accounting, which is all that's left, I can replace both those occurrences with 3. All right. So now this won't be called department name anymore. I will call that the same thing I've called that over on the other table, which is department number. All right. The advantage of doing this the way that I've done it is now the words IT, payroll, and accounting only appear once in this table. Other than that, just their numbers, their associated number appears. You might not think that's a bad thing, that's not a big thing one way or the other, but it is. And it is a big thing just because of the fact, all right, it is a big thing just because of the fact that we don't have to worry about misspelling type of things, etc. All right. Now, if you notice in here, there's nothing special. All the names are different, but it would be possible for us to hire another Chloe Green. Maybe Chloe has got a daughter who's also Chloe. And maybe when we hire her, she also works in payroll. Now, how do you tell these two employees here apart? As of right now, there's no way to do so. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add another field, and I'm going to just call this ID. I could call it employee ID, but I'm just going to call it ID. All right, and then it'll be 1, 2, 2, and I get to use the magic of Excel to drag all that down. All right, I'm going to get rid of the other Chloe Green. We're just going to keep it the way we had it. Now this special field that's right here, that you see right here, that's referred to as ID, is another thing that we can put in here. It's called a primary key. And a primary key is simply a unique record identifier. All right, unique record identifier. So for each of these records, what uniquely identifies them is not first name, is not last name, is not department number, but is ID. The IDs must be unique for each record. So we've got ID over here, and we've got department number, which is the unique thing over here. All right. What if we decide to add another payroll department? We can actually do that, as long as it has its own unique number. Then it's not a problem. All right, you'll notice that the department number, the name of that field appears here and here. And if you remember before we talked about this, I said it's a database management system. No, it really is what's called a relational database management system. All right? And the important thing is the relation means that I have to have a way to be able to relate these tables together. What if somebody asks me for a list of everyone's first name and last name and department name? Those are in two different tables right now. So as you'll see in upcoming lectures, what we'll have to do is what's referred to as join those tables together. All right? So I've given you a lot, so I'm going to breeze through some of the stuff that's in the book. So what they're going to do in here, and the author will say this in every chapter, is what they're going to do is they're going to create a table, add records to it, print the contents, import records into a second table, modify the second table, create a query, create a form, create a report. And you go, wait a minute, Jeff, you are breezing through that way too fast. Don't worry about it, because I'm literally going to show you step by step what they do in the book to show you what's happening. All right, so this is how you create a database. There are other ways. I mean, when you go through this stuff, there are several ways that you can create a database. I'm going to show you what I consider to be the easiest or most straightforward way of creating creating any of this stuff as we go through here. All right, maybe the most important picture in this chapter. This is the picture that's in your book on page AC7, and I should mention that on page AC3, the author gives you his definition. The rows and tables are called records. The columns and tables are called fields. All right. A unique identifier is called a primary key. That's on page 3. On page 4, the author mentions that, like we had it with the department number, the book rep number appears in two different tables. So you could do the relating together. All right. I showed you the roadmap, which is on page 5. Again, this picture that you see on your screen right now is figure 1-2 that's on page AC7. You do not, repeat, you do not have to memorize this, but you should be familiar with the things that are in there. Now, I may go through different things and I may forget where the object tab is or whatever, and it's really not that important. But it's a page that you might want to dog ear, put a little fold on it in case you have to go back to it. All right. They talk about modifying a primary key. You're going to learn how to do that. It's unbelievably simple. All right. Now they're going to show you different ways of doing things. Quite often, I'll go through their way of doing it, but sometimes at least I'll go through my own way of doing it, which may not be the best thing that you've ever heard, but I'm going to try to do it in the most straightforward way possible. All right. So a lot of this is, how do you do this? How do you do this type of thing? I'm not going to run through all those steps with you right now. It'll make more sense to actually do them. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's actually shown in your book, but it's not, it appears at least as though it's not exactly shown in the PowerPoints. On page AC9 in your book, the author discusses in table 1.1 in the middle of the page and the text up above it, the major data types that are available in Access. You might say data types, I have no idea what you're talking about. You probably do, even though you might not have looked at them this way before. This ID field, that's a number. That'll end up being an integer right there. So will this, because that number there equates with this number here. The rest of the information, in other words, all of this, and all of this that you see there, not the 1, 2, 3, of course. So all of this, and all of that, other than that one there, those are all strings. So we're going to use short text a lot. That's a string or a collection of characters that has no numeric value, that has to be between 1 and 255 characters in length. There's a field called number that only holds numbers, a field called currency for monetary data, a field called date and time for just that, a type that's long text. So rather than being able to store only 255 characters, I believe that you could store like 65,536 characters in there. All right, auto number. I don't want to have to worry about setting up numbers for all these employees and all of these department numbers. I'm going to let the system do it by using auto number. Yes, no, which is sometimes known as a Boolean field. Yes, no, or true, false, or on, off type of thing. OLE, object. OLE stands for object, linking, and embedding. All right. And if you've ever seen, for example, if you have a Word document that has a spreadsheet in it, and if you click on the spreadsheet, it actually brings up Excel. That's an Excel spreadsheet that's been embedded into a Word document, that kind of thing. Hyperlink, to store a hyperlink address. Attachment, to store basically any attached file, and a calculated field. We're going to talk about all these as we go through here. All right. So what I'm going to do is, it looks like the rest of this chapter here is walking you through all the steps, and I'm going to show you that in the next lecture. So I'm just going to talk for a little bit more about a few more things that I consider to be important. All right. So I want to show you something. This is what I'm going to come back and build for you in the next chapter. I've already built it, but I want to show you it. Let's see. Oh, I guess I'm not. I thought I was connected. Let's see if I still am. Yeah. So here is that same database that I just showed you. I probably have different names in it because I just did these off the top of my head, and it's really and truly not important. All right, but In fact, I don't know if what I have in here. Yep, I just put the members of my family in here. All right. So why am I even showing you that? Because if I bring this up, this is everything in what's called datasheet view, but I can also right mouse click on here and choose design view and bring those up. We're going to see this because I'm going to show you exactly how to create a table. I'm going to use the same stuff they show in the book. All right, first I'm going to create the table that I just showed you in the spreadsheet, then I'm going to go through all the stuff that's shown in the book. All right, several places in here they're going to show you if you make a mistake how you can undo it. All right, so they show you how to set up a database, create a database, put one or more tables in there, and start putting in data or things into the tables. All right. If I decide I want to come back here and go back to datasheet view and I want to print this, I can do a file, and if I want to see what it'll look like, I can go to print and I can go to print preview. And there it's showing me, that's exactly what it'll print if I do this. So it'll have each field, the field names, and the value for each field, the name of the table, and the current date. All right, and they talked about that on page 29. All right. What we're going to end up doing in this class, more than anything else, just so you're aware of this. Okay, let's see. I don't want to print it. All right. So let's say that I come in here and I want just people. Let's see. Yeah. So just people who have an A in their first name. So notice Sandy's got an A in it, but Jeff does not. Taylor's got an A in it. Mackenzie's got an A in it. Chloe does not, and Lacey does not. Well, how would I figure that out? Well, that's called querying a database. So what I do would be this. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to come in here, and don't worry, because I'm going to show you all this, but I just want to show you the kind of things we're going to learn how to do in here. I'm going to go over to Query Wizard, and Simple Query Wizard, and click OK. And I only have the one table, so I want the first name, yes, and I want the last name, yes, okay. And next, I'll call it names with an A query. Kind of a silly name, but you get the idea at least from what I'm calling it as far as what'll be put in there. Now, I'm going to change this a little. I do want to go in and modify the query design. So I'm going to click Finish. All right. And this is all stuff that we're going to learn. So right now, if I run this query, it's going to show me exactly the same information that we looked at before. All right, but I don't want that. I want to go into Datasheet, to Design View, and I want to say here, for criteria, like, the word like, and then, I don't know if single quotes or double quotes, I'll have to remember. Let's try it in single quotes. And I'm going to put in here %, a %, and that might not be right, but we're going to find out. All right, I'm going to run the query again. Okay, it didn't like that. That's okay. We'll go back and fix it. And it might be asterisk. And you'll notice Sandy with an A, Taylor with an A, Mackenzie with an A, and Lacey with an A. All right? And you'll notice too, they're not in any specific order. Well, what if I don't like that order? Okay? So then what I can do is I can come back in here again and I can say, okay, criteria, sort. Yeah, I want to sort on this field in ascending order. So notice now LMST. Now it's in ascending order. If I didn't like that, I could come back again and I could say instead of ascending order, put it in descending order. Alright, and I'm running it, and now it's TSML. That's all stuff that you're going to learn how to do. That's querying, that's the topic of Chapter 2. And we're going to get into reports and forms, and I don't even want to show them to you. I think it'll make more sense to go back in and talk about that information a little bit later. Alright. Then I'm all the way up on page 56, almost done, believe it or not, with the first chapter. And the author talks about backup and recovery. And the author says you don't want to allow a situation in which data has been damaged or destroyed to go uncorrected. You want to be able to make a backup of your database. So the author shows you how to make a backup on page 56. We're going to run through that in just a bit. Then on page 57, the author talks about compacting a database. And basically you do that because as you add information and remove information from a database, it may get pockets of space that's not being used. So by compacting it, you can fix that. So we'll go through that. Then we'll also start to, as they mention on page 58 in the book, we'll start to talk about the process of how do you actually design a database. So we'll go through that. All right. And that's about it for right now. So when I come back, I'm going to actually do the information that you saw in these in the PowerPoints. So we're going to go through all of that information in just a couple minutes.